Coastal Ecosystems and Social Science Specialist here at Texas Sea Grant. I'm stationed out of Texas A&M Galveston, although I do work statewide. And so Josh asked me to talk a little bit about the human dimensions research and how we can incorporate that to improve your outreach projects, or really just your projects in general. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, talk about some things I've done in the past, not as an advertisement to work with me, although you should work with me and include me on all of your proposals, but more as an advertisement for the type of research that I do and how that can really help you out with your outreach and with your projects. While also helping me out by allowing me to do outreach, or researchers like me, and also allowing me to answer some research questions. And so, the idea is that we want to create authentic outreach and maybe get a little smarter while we do it. So let's see if I can successfully navigate this. Yes, the page of logos. I'm going to talk about a few different research projects here, and they were all, of course, working with partners. And so it's very important to acknowledge all of them with logos. And so here are the logos. So the question is, how can we integrate across disciplines to improve research and outreach, right? And this is something I think about a lot because I'm always trying to think about these integrative projects. It's fun to work in my own silo, and I do a lot of work in my own silo. But when you're thinking about complex environmental issues, a lot of times you want to be thinking interdisciplinarily. You want to be thinking about integration. You want to be thinking about the social and the natural sciences working together. And so that's what I'm going to talk about a little way. And there are three ways that I've done it in the past. Of course, there are more than three ways to do it, but three that I've done in the past. And the first is audience research. Using audience research to improve your outreach, right? It's one thing to throw in, hey, we're going to do some outreach at the end, but it's another thing to actually do research-based outreach. And I'm going to argue strongly for doing research-based outreach rather than just throwing in some stuff at the end. The second thing is maybe like a needs assessment to help with the project design. And I've done some of this in the past. If you can incorporate social science throughout it, it might actually change the way that you do your project. So it's important to maybe think about that. And then the last way that I'm going to talk about is in project evaluation, and that can feed into current and future outreach. And I'll give an example of something we have going on right now with that. And I was hoping to get you some data hot off the presses, which I was almost successful in doing. But not quite. But I'll show you a version of the data I was hoping to get you. So first, let's talk about audience research to improve outreach. And so the example I'm going to give here is a project I did actually during my postdoc in Indiana, Purdue University. And this is a project we called Helping the Hellbender. Lessons learned from a community-based social marketing campaign to conserve a non-charismatic endangered salamander, or at least that's what the publication will be called when it comes out. But this was actually part of a bigger project related to the hellbender. And so if you haven't heard of it, this is a hellbender. And it's Cryptobranchus allegheniensis. And it is up to 2 foot long salamander. It's also known as the mud devil or the snot otter, or of course the lasagna lizard, which is maybe my favorite. And so here's one kind of on insight and for perspective for you. And these grow up to 2 feet. And they love to live in streams. They need nice clean areas, nice clean water, and these little rocky riffle areas where they like to hide and hunt for food and everything. And the hellbender's range is fairly limited to sort of the middle part of the eastern United States. And most notably, there's a couple of actually endangered populations, and one in Indiana, one over in Missouri. I believe the one in Missouri is federally listed. The one in Indiana, in the Blue River watershed, is state endangered. And so there was a big project that Purdue researchers, these are people in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, undertook to try to understand hellbender biology, hellbender ecology, and work towards restoring the hellbender. And they were doing a whole lot of natural science around this really cool, I call it a lizard, but it's not actually a lizard, this cool amphibian, salamander. Salamander, yes, amphibious salamander. And it's really important from a more applied standpoint because if you look at the population since the mid-90s, it's just been on a steady downward path. This is an 11-site survey they did. This is some monitoring work associated with all the hellbender ecology. And so in addition to doing all this ecology, they said, we need to do some outreach. We're really concerned about threats to the hellbender, so let's do this. And so they worked with the DNR to get additional funding to do some outreach associated with this huge biology and ecology project. And so that's where they brought us in. And so they were mainly worried about a few different threats to the hellbender. Things like habitat loss, the pet trade, disease, and they were really worried about persecution. That was one of the primary concerns, in that they were afraid that anglers thought that the hellbender were eating sport fish and they would come and gobble up all the sport fish, and therefore anglers were killing hellbenders to save, whatever sport fish they were fishing for. And they said, we need to do some important outreach as part of this project to make sure that anglers are no longer killing hellbenders, because you can't kill them. And so we wanted to do this multifaceted outreach campaign targeting landowners, anglers, and the general public based on the principles of community-based social marketing. And so again, they're really concerned about this persecution. But we decided in advance, don't worry about that. We decided in advance that what they wanted to do was this project. And so they said, well, let's do a pre-survey to see what's happening. Then we'll do the outreach campaign, and then we'll do the post-survey. And this is what we decided to do at Purdue, because we said, let's do this scientifically. Instead of just doing some outreach, let's do it scientifically. Let's bring in the researchers and do it. And so a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. We did this pre-survey with 541 residents and landowners in the area, looking at their awareness, perceptions, behavioral intentions toward the hellbender, which means, do they intend to kill them? And we found out that very few people said that they had killed or collect hellbenders, and very few people thought that hellbenders ate sport fish. So the whole underlying idea behind the outreach campaign was stop collecting the hellbenders, stop killing them, and they don't eat sport fish. Well, and it turns out that whole idea was maybe not held in the public. So we were going to do this whole outreach campaign at the behest of the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources and at the behest of the DNR. And lo and behold, the outreach campaign was going to be targeted at a behavior that wasn't happening. So that would be kind of a huge waste of money and resources. And so instead, we used the survey results to come up with a new outreach campaign. And so sort of the first lesson we learned from there was you got to know your audience and question your assumptions. And if they hadn't done the scientific outreach, or the science-based outreach, this would have never happened. We would have done a big outreach project. Hey, stop killing the hellbender. They don't eat sport fish. And it would have been largely ineffective because it would have been targeting the wrong thing. And so the real lesson, and this is what I want you to take from this, is pay social scientists to do research, obviously, specifically Sea Grant social scientists. And so instead, we did an outreach campaign targeting a few different behaviors, like cut the line if you catch a hellbender. Don't handle them. They've got like a slime coating. You could damage them, give them diseases, and then also report the sightings. And so we retargeted the campaign towards those behaviors as opposed to towards the knowledge-based thing, hellbenders don't eat sport fish, and please don't kill hellbenders. And so they did a big community-based social marketing outreach campaign. It was actually pretty cool. We got these little bobbers that we got for all the anglers with a little cut the line sticker. And then some information. This is the ruler up there is a sticker that we got for people's ice chests to put, when they went fishing, or coolers as they call them in Indiana. We call them ice chests growing up. And all this is targeting the behaviors to cut the line and call professionals. And so, again, these would have been mistargeted if we hadn't done the research. They did homeowner outreach. This is all part of community-based social marketing. And more general stuff. We got stickers, we got posters and magazines. Everybody loves coloring books. So we got coloring books. And they had like some feasts, eat like a hellbender, which means eating crawfish and stuff. This was in Indiana, not in the southwestern Louisiana, so it wasn't very tasty. But the point is that we did it, take pledges and stuff like all this stuff. We got a big mascot, Herbie the Hellbender. Kids love him. Going to events and things like that. And of course, the Hellbender prophylactic, which wasn't our idea, but we grabbed onto it, so to speak. And I think the slogan on that one was, if you're feeling tender, think of the bender. And that's all I have to say about that. And so the point of that is that, hey, here, by incorporating social science from the beginning of the outreach, instead of just tossing it in at the end, they were able to perform more effective outreach. And so I think it's really important to think about that. And by paying us to help design it, we didn't do a lot of the outreach itself. Well, some of the students did, but we did help design the outreach and design the evaluation and the pre-survey. Things were able to be a lot more effective. And I could go much longer on that, but I won't, because we want to move on to the next thing. And so that's another example of the way that dimensions research can help you is through performing like an initial needs assessment to help improve project design. And so this is some more work at Purdue. I've been at Texas Sea Grant for about 18 months, and so all my results are starting to come in now. So when I give this talk to you next year, you'll have much more current stuff, but the themes are still the same. And so I was part of this big project called Useful to Usable. It was a USDA-funded $5 million project across the Midwestern United States. Consisting of state climatologists, crop modelers, agronomists, economists, social scientists, regional climate center staff, and everything from across the Midwest. Purdue, Iowa State, Michigan, Illinois, you name it. If it's a Midwestern university, it was there. And so we did this study of corn agriculture throughout the Midwest, and the climatologists and the other, sort of hard sciences, they like to call it. I like to call it easy science, but it doesn't matter. They were interested in answering some technical questions about how climate was influencing corn production and all this other stuff, but they also wanted to create a series of decision support tools to help farmers incorporate climate, the information they were finding, how best to think about these climate issues, how to incorporate that information into farming practices. And so we brought in some social scientists to do this. And, the idea is, what tools can we design that will be useful? And what tools can we design that will be usable? And so how can they take these information they're finding and do outreach around it to make tools that are both useful and usable to the target audience? And that was a big hunk of that project. And so they brought in the social scientists to do surveys and focus groups and everything to find out. And so we're going to check out sort of the results. If I can successfully show you my web browser that is right now showing GoToMeeting troubleshooting. Josh, can you see my web browser? Well, I will assume you can, and if not, I'll describe what I'm seeing since Josh is muted.
Yes.
Okay, great. And so here are all the tools they
Yes, I can
developed.
see it.
Okay, great. Here are all the tools that they ended up developing, things like a corn growing degree day tool, whatever that is. And so it's, you can look at like how much heat you've gotten and how much heat is allowed and look at different, graphs and things like that, depending on where you are. And so it's all these geospatial tools that they developed. And I won't really bore you with them all, but basically through the process of the focus groups and the surveys, we figured out what is going to be the most effective tools to design and what is the best way to do it. And so we really helped to define the problem through social science. And we also really helped with subsequent outreach development. What is the best way to talk about this, especially with a controversial issue like climate? Even though it's not controversial among scientists, it is controversial among farmers in the Midwest. You can trust me there. And so, how can we develop this outreach? To talk about these issues. And we actually found out that, like, for example, extension are the wrong people to talk to farmers about outreach or about climate change, which is not something that we knew before. And so through that scientific process, by developing science, social science, we were able to do this. And so then the last one I want to talk about, and then we can have, I think I'll give a few hints about how to do this, and then we can have a discussion. The last one that I want to talk about is project evaluation. And so this is ongoing right now. This is an oyster with some clam egg cases on it. And it's one of the few public domain pictures I could find related to this project. So we just had a big lecture about using public domain stuff. So here you go. And this is a half moon reef restoration project. And this is a huge reef restoration that the Nature Conservancy is doing in Matagorda Bay, Texas. So Half Moon Reef is an oyster reef. It's a 50-some acre oyster reef that traditionally existed along the Texas coast. And thanks to a variety of reasons, the reef was pretty much just trash. I think water quality is the big one, freshwater inflow, stuff like that. But I'm not an oyster ecologist, so you'll have to ask them. And so the Nature Conservancy got a lot of money to do a reef restoration project, and they threw in like a lot of rocks and seeded it and everything.
Hey, Stuart,
Yes, Josh. Yeah.
you froze for a little bit there. Can you just go back about 45 seconds, what you were saying?
Sure. I apologize. Let's see. So Half Moon Reef Restoration Project. Am I back? Okay. Don't tell me if I am. Tell me if I'm not. So the Half Moon Reef is a was an oyster reef that existed in Matagorda Bay, Texas. It was a large oyster reef, dozens of acres large, that thanks to things like water quality loss and freshwater inflows, I believe, but the oyster reef basically died out. It used to be a really important fish breeding ground. And so the Nature Conservancy got a bunch of money together to do a reef restoration project. And so they came in with a bunch of rocks, with a bunch of oyster, what do they call them? I don't know, little oyster babies to put on there. As you can see, I'm not an oyster ecologist or an oyster biologist, and started this really big oyster reef restoration project. And it's been tremendously successful from a biological and ecological standpoint. And they've done a lot of neat biology work and ecology work with the scientists there to see, how is this restoration gone, and answer a lot of ecological questions. But one question they weren't sure of is, what is the effect this is having on people? Are people happy about the reef? Do they know about the reef? What kind of outreach do we need to do? And so they brought us in, Texas Sea Grant, me and Andrew Ropicki, who's our marine economist, and then Bill Balboa, who's an extension agent in Matagorda County. And they said, hey, we want to do a really good evaluation of how this project has been. Are people happy with Half Moon Reef? Do they know about it? Are they fishing it? And so on. And so they brought us there to answer these sorts of questions. Who fishes here? Have people heard about it? And so we're using online or Angler Intercept and then online surveys to find out, right? We actually went down to the docks to talk to a bunch of anglers, talked to hundreds of anglers, and we've surveyed more using the internet. And we've also talked to guides to try to answer all of these questions. And, here's an example of an early graph that I've got together. On the top in the orange are Half Moon Reef anglers, and on the bottom are the other anglers, people who didn't finish Half Moon Reef, and you see that the vast majority of Half Moon Reef anglers are completely satisfied with it, and nobody is dissatisfied, whereas a few people are dissatisfied with the other thing. And so these are just sort of some of the questions we're answering, and so people are satisfied, people love it. So when you're planning outreach, you can say that this is a really popular fishing destination. What outreach have they done so far? How successful has it been? Well, most of the anglers, the penetration is good, but not great. The darker greens, the grays are where we didn't have any anglers from those counties. The greens mean we had angler from those counties. What proportion of them had heard of it? And so you see right around Matagorda Bay, which is, if you can see my mouse right around here, right around Matagorda Bay, many people have heard of it, and even some up into here, but not as many around Galveston area. And so, it just helps to give you an idea. And we're going to be going much more in depth on this analysis, but I was just working on it this morning. And then if you look, the Half Moon Reef anglers in the red dots seem to be a little bit different from the other anglers in the blue dots. More of them reported fishing for each species, which is an interesting finding. It might mean that they're more knowledgeable. It might mean that they're more avid, which I've got some other data to show, which I won't show you today. But the point is that we're finding out a lot of information about these people and really evaluating the project from that standpoint. And so, thinking about it, how can we integrate across disciplines to improve research and outreach? And I've shown you sort of three different ways. One is planning your outreach using a scientific process. The other is using social science to maybe help plan your whole project, like we did with the decision support tools. As social scientists, I don't know anything about the climate science they were doing, but I do know about the people. And so I do know how to help translate that climate science into something that is useful, into something that is usable, and to make sure that we're targeting those audiences. And then as you're planning your outreach or trying to evaluate what you've done, you can bring in social scientists there to do it. And so really what I'm getting at is the way to do this successfully is to make social science a priority. Okay, and what does a priority mean? A priority means not thrown in the last paragraph of your proposal, not thrown in the last paragraph of your manuscript, right? Bring social scientists in your initial meeting when you're going to write your letter of intent. And give social scientists money, give them time, give them budget, give them room on the agenda. And by doing that, you're making social science and human dimensions research an authentic priority, which is the way that you make all of this happen. And doing that is a really, really excellent thing because social science makes your research better. Right. And it also makes my research better because I haven't talked about, like I say, probably 6 papers that I'll publish from what I've talked about or from just the projects we talked about today, because I didn't talk about the new knowledge that I created, but I was able to create new knowledge through the process of making better research. And you're able to get more funding through the process of incorporating social science. And so that really, to me, is the key, is working together to authentically integrate social science to make everybody's research better and everybody's outreach better. And of course, when I say better, what do I really mean but more fundable. And that's really the key, isn't it? And so with that, I would love to chat about it if you have any questions. And thank you. My email address is here if you want to send an email to talk further. And there we go.